In this lesson, we're going to look at chromosomes and why they're necessary for sexual reproduction. As a review, remember that DNA stores hereditary information and that eukaryotes have linear DNA. So what's a chromosome? They're highly coiled pieces of DNA, and they determine all your traits. So this is something that you're going to hear a lot, and you really need to know. DNA codes for proteins which create traits. That is, like I said, really important to remember. So how are chromosomes set up? Each chromosome has a set of genes, and each one of these genes codes for a specific protein. Now you have two copies of each one of your chromosomes, and they're called a homologous pair. In other words, they're both the same. They both have the same genes. So this is our example of a chromosome, a section of which is called a gene, which codes for a protein that makes a trait like hair color. And you have two copies of each one of these. And that second copy has the same gene on it. And this is a homologous pair. So for example, this set of chromosomes has three genes on it: hair color, eye color, and skin color. The two pairs both have the same genes. And where do they come from? Well, you get one set from each parent. This is why you have two of each chromosome. So for a human being that has 46 total, you get half of them, 23 from your mom, and 23 from your dad. And in order for all this to work, you got to end up with an even number. So dad's going to give you one set. Now in this example, I just have 10 chromosomes. A normal human would have 23. But dad has given you one of each one of these 10 chromosomes. And notice that they're slightly different because they all have different genes on them. Mom is also going to give you a set. So notice, she has given you a second copy of each one of those genes. So now you have the full number, which is 20 total chromosomes, 10 pairs. Now here's an example of when this doesn't really work out. So we have a horse that has 64 chromosomes and a donkey that has 62. Now if you cross a horse and a donkey, you get a mule. But that horse is going to give 32 chromosomes because that's half of 64. That mule is going to give 31 because it's half of 62. When those two numbers are combined, you get a mule that has 63 chromosomes. That's not an even number, can't split it in half, and so mules are actually infertile. In order to get more mules, you have to mate more horses than donkeys. You can't have a mule have a baby. Now, are all these chromosomes the same? No. Each one of the pairs has different genes. And two of your chromosomes are sex chromosomes. And sex chromosomes are ones that determine your gender. So a male has an X and a Y chromosome, whereas a female has two X chromosomes. And this is what makes the difference between males and females. Now, do all cells have the same chromosomes? Sort of. Most of your cells have all the full number, have two sets. And we're going to call these 2N, meaning two sets, or diploid, because di means two. So most of your cells are diploid or 2N. Now, you have some cells, which are called sex cells, that actually only have one set. So instead of 2N, we're just going to say they're N. And instead of diploid, we're going to say haploid. I think of haploid like half, because it only has half the number. So in humans, the 2N or diploid number is 46, because that's the full number. The half, or the N or haploid number, is 23. So what are these sex cells? Well, if you're a female, they're eggs. If you're a male, they're sperm. And they're important because they allow organisms to do sexual reproduction. So a female, the mom is going to give half of her chromosomes, and the dad is going to give half of his chromosomes. So we have an egg cell and a sperm cell that are both haploid, meaning they only have half the number. That way, those two halves can combine through sexual reproduction to produce a baby that has the full number of chromosomes. Now we're going to look at karyotypes. And these are pictures of an organism's chromosomes. So this is an example of a karyotype. And you can see that it's got each one of the homologous pairs lined up together. And so you can look and see how many, what they look like, all of that kind of thing. So what can this tell me? Well, first I can determine the species, because different species have different numbers of chromosomes. I can determine the gender by looking at the sex chromosomes. And I can figure out if there's any chromosomal disorders. In other words, are there any issues with the chromosomes? Are there too many? Are there not enough? Are any of them broken or missing parts? Things like that. So this is a human karyotype, and we know because it's got 23 pairs and 46 total chromosomes. Now, 2 of those are sex chromosomes, which are circled here. And because it's got an X and a Y, and notice that the Y is much smaller, this is a male. And if we look around at these chromosomes, none of them are abnormal. There's the correct number, and so this is a normal person. Now, I can't figure out from this if there's any genetic disorders. There may be issues with the genes, but there aren't any issues with the chromosomes. This is an example of a person that's not normal. Now, first of all, we know that this is a female because she has 2 X chromosomes, but we know that she's not normal because she's got 3 of our number 21 chromosome. This is called trisomy 21, or better known as Down syndrome. And so when you have too few or too many chromosomes, that's a really big deal. And doctors will often do karyotypes, something similar to a karyotype, to look and see if there are any of these types of disorders, especially in older women.